So the last of the June shows have wrapped up with House of the Dragon Season 2, and oh boy. What started out as a promising and exciting time of the year quickly went down the pooper when these shows aired. You got The Boys Season 4, House of the Dragon Season 2, and supposedly The Bear Season 3 is kinda stinky. I didn't get to that yet, kinda because I'm a little scared to watch it, but here we are. And whereas in my last House of the Dragon video, I shared my pleasure and glee with the first half of Season 2. Not perfect, but pretty darn good. Little did I know those words would boing around in my brain like the ball from Pong. I'm sorry to say, but the second half of Season 2 sucks more than the Apothicon servant from Shadows of Evil. It's a shame because I was thinking this show was gonna survive. But at least there's one thing. I decided to make a video about it because unlike The Boys Season 4, I actually kinda care enough to make a video about it. So let's find a way to get through this slop together, shall we? Let's start with the biggest problem, and that's the finale. No, I did not Photoshop this title. The episode's name really is The Queen Who Ever Was. And you may stop and think to yourself for one moment and think, what the hell does that mean? And I can guarantee you would stay there thinking for 30 more minutes, trying to wonder, what the hell does that mean? You have Rhaenys, who is the queen who never was because she was never queen, but then you also maybe have this about Rhaenyra, and she's the queen who ever was? What? I'm sorry, was the writer or the person who titles these episodes, were they drinking at the bar playing darts, doing keg shots when this title came to them? Sure, this isn't the biggest deal ever. I'm just so baffled. It's just so silly. It's stupid. Who thought of this name? This is how I imagine they were typing this title onto the script. Besides the ridiculous title, you may have thought, well, there's 2 more episodes after this. And you would have thought wrong, because for some reason we're 2 episodes less now, and I guess the writers forgot that. Because truly nothing happens in this episode. The only 2 things I can think of is 1, Tywin Lannister mud wrestles with Philosophy Tube, and then everybody gets ready to go to battle. And that's it. We have another forced Rhaenyra and Alicent scene, which I'll get to in a moment. We have Rhaena chasing after a dragon, which we never see what happens with. And we have Jace mewing for the whole episode as well. So we end Season 2 going to war. And you may have thought Season 1 ended and we were going to war. And then you thought Season 2 Episode 2, we're going to war. And then you thought Season 2 Episode 4, we're in the war now, baby. And then you think Season 2 Episode 8, now we're for real going to war. It genuinely feels like they spent their entire budget on Episode 4, and that was it. They said, for 4 more episodes, how do we make it seem like nothing's happening, but also something may be happening in the future? So let's go over what happens in these 4 episodes. Probably the biggest problem for me is Alicent and her character. In Season 1, Alicent is all for her kids, and she's all for them being on the throne. She also hates Rhaenyra, as we see in the episode where she literally tries to stab her son's eye out. Granted, he did do the same thing to Aemon, her son, but the point is, she is totally for her kids to protect them no matter what and put them on the Iron Throne. In Episode 7 of Season 1, Alicent helps with a coup to install her son as king and capture or kill any potential dissonance by the lords committed to Rhaenyra. She has wanted this a long time. You can tell because every scene she has with adult Aegon, she's basically yelling at him, telling him he'll be king. All she needed was that little extra tap over the edge to go through with it. After she misheard Viserys talking about Aegon the Conqueror, whether on purpose or by accident, she took that and ran with it, even over the past 20 years. Viserys only ever said it would be Rhaenyra. So when we get to Episode 8 of Season 2, and Alicent offers up Aegon's head and her son Aemon so she can leave and just take her daughter Helaena somewhere, it had me gobsmacked. Did I create a different character in my mind, or is this show gaslighting me? There's a point in this season where Alicent has regrets, I guess. But again, it doesn't make any sense because if you compare it to season 1 Alicent, they're almost two completely different characters. The way the show is trying to portray Alicent is this sympathetic woman who's been put into this box her whole entire life, and then she finally realizes it's girl boss moment, time to break out. And while sure there are parts of that are true, very obviously her father Otto used her and controlled her to still have some power over Viserys. But Otto had been removed from the hand of the king for a long time, and by the time she was an adult, she was her own person. They were talking like they were equals. Alicent was just as complicit as Otto in making Aegon king. And it's not like it just came out of nowhere. Like I said before, she knew he was going to be king and she wanted him to be king for years. So when you characterize her that way and then change it to say, well, she's just been taken advantage of her whole life. In some parts, sure. But the way it's actually portrayed is that Alicent isn't able to have power over her kids and essentially be the ruler. So she throws a hissy fit that her kids are adults and have their own minds, and then goes away and basically says, kill my kids, I don't care anymore. Which again is ridiculous, because although Alicent did care for her kids and want to help guide them, she knew exactly what would happen when Aegon became king, which was that he would want to rule it the way he wanted to. It was shown very early that he was not really one to pay attention to what she was telling him, and did his own thing. So the Alicent stuff really doesn't make any sense. Then you've got the stinkiest of the duty, which is Daemon and his storyline. This was one of the things that I thought was bad throughout the season. If you go and watch my previous video on House of the Dragon, basically what I said was, felt like we were not going anywhere, we were just wasting our time, didn't know what to do with Daemon, and none of this is really contributing to anything. And there were people in my comments saying that you had to do it because it was in the book. And I thought, fair enough. If it lasts a few episodes, not great, but it's best to be faithful to the source material. But now that we've gotten to the end of the season, I can say that's some hookus, and we should have just taken it out even if it was in the book. I am very much for faithful adaptations, but I also understand there are some things, especially from books, that you cannot adapt to the screen. And there are some things that are just bad, which you shouldn't adapt. If they're almost universally agreed that it doesn't work, take it out. But the argument that it was in the books so we have to do it, sure, I would normally agree with, but supposedly this does not really follow the book in a lot of areas. It changes a lot of things. So why is it we change possibly some good stuff into some bad stuff, but this bad thing we have to keep? I also don't even know if this is exactly how it happens in the book. I'm going to assume not, because I don't think George R.R. Martin writes that bad of stuff. But just in terms of this argument that it was in the book so you have to do it, well, sure, but if you're already not doing stuff or changing things to make them worse, then why do you have to do this? Now, what makes the Daemon stuff so bad is that we essentially sit with Daemon having visions about nothing for 7 episodes. And then at the very end, we finally get a scene with him meeting with the River Lords, and then he gets them to pledge to him through the Tullys. So it's like 98% hoopla and poo-poo for 2% what he was actually set there to do. We get tales of his atrocities. Don't know what those are. He sent the Blackwoods to do stuff. Again, maybe they mentioned it in one line. I don't know what they did. I guess they did bad stuff. TM. But the whole of this supposed arc with Daemon is him struggling with himself, that he wanted to be king. He thinks he deserves it over Rhaenyra, but also how he treated his brother when he was alive. Him having regret over how he treated his brother is fair. I think that's been true throughout the show. He's always wanted his brother's approval, but couldn't really show him the love that he probably wanted to. And that could be interesting to go over in a few episodes, or even have him see Rhaenyra and have him think of his brother, or even do the Harrenhal thing, but cut it down to like 3 episodes and have it move where he has some of the visions, he's being haunted by Viserys, but he is also actually getting the River Lords together and finding a way to get them to be on Team Black. What I completely disagree with is the idea that Daemon wants the throne. How many times do we have to disprove this, old man? Sure, Daemon had a problem with it at the beginning, but it wasn't because he had a desire to be king, it was because he had a desire to have the respect and love of his brother. Besides the fact that Daemon had 20 years to get over this, it was obvious, at least in the first season, that he he had no ill will towards Rhaenyra. He didn't blame her for taking his spot. Despite how weird it is, he does love her. And you can tell because he literally killed Corlys's brother for questioning Rhaenyra and her sons in the line of succession. And he was also the first one to pledge to Rhaenyra and give her the crown. Like, I'm sorry, but this one scene at the end of season 1 invalidates pretty much any idea that Daemon hated Rhaenyra now because she took the throne and he was mad and jealous at her. It's phooey. It's there to add unearned conflict because I guess they could not think of a single other thing for Daemon to do other than trip and sulk the whole season. Which, by the way, would this storyline not be over in like the first episode it happened if Daemon was consistent? He seems to have no problem killing people that mildly even get in his way. But this witch is messing with him. He knows the witch is messing with him, but decides, you know what? She's cool. And another side note, how the hell did Daemon even interpret that vision that the Weirwood gave him? The only thing interpretable for Daemon was Rhaenyra being on the throne. Unless he watched 8 seasons of Game of Thrones, I don't think he has any idea what's going on. I don't think he was sitting there like Leo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood saying, "Oop, there's Daenerys." But this also leads me to my next big problem, especially with the season finale, with this shoving down our throats of the White Walkers and the prince that was promised. We already know that doesn't mean shit. Supposedly, it wasn't even mentioned in the book. So why are we adding bad stuff that literally no one likes? Season 8 and mostly season 7 are essentially hated by every single person that watched it. Yet they keep saying, look, the White Walkers are coming, look. You know, Daenerys, you loved her. Not that the writers watch my videos, but I will say this right here. I am looking at you in my non-existent camera. Stop. We do not want more White Walker stuff after it was already ruined. Dan and Dave ruined it. All right, we're done. What we do want is an actual war, which apparently you guys forgot about. Now on to my last point though. Something happened to Rhaenyra this season that made her a dummy stupid head. And whatever it is needs to be reversed or else. It feels like after Rhaenys died, we needed another stupid character. So the stupid got transferred to Rhaenyra, which is truly a shame seeing as how she is, well, the main character. You may be thinking, how dare you call my queen stupid? Well, here's why she is. Like I mentioned in my previous video, she decides to go into enemy territory just to talk to the queen, who she should hate and who should also hate her, to have a reasonable conversation. Killing Rhaenyra would essentially put a stop to the entire war. With no figurehead and person to rally behind, they would all pledge their fealty to Aegon and the war would be over. So going into King's Landing may not have been the best idea. Letting her small council walk all over her and talk shit about her, essentially right in front of her face. And letting the small council essentially make decisions for her, because whenever she wants to do something and they say no, she says, okay. But worst of all, she decides to recruit bastards to help her take the throne. And the fact that her son Jace, who I think is 16 in the show, is smarter than her on what would happen if they recruited bastards and legitimized them is absolutely bananas. This entire war is essentially being fought over the line of succession. Either Aegon gets to be king or Rhaenyra gets to be queen. There have been questions about Jace, Luke, and I think Joffrey in terms of their legitimateality. So in this war of succession, we decide, you know what? There are a lot of Targaryen bastards out there, right? Some even older than me. Some who apparently are even related to my father and my uncle. What if, stay with me here, we legitimize them, therefore making the claim to the throne even more diluted, because not only are a lot of the bastards men, they're also older than me and a more direct descendant from older Targaryens. Well, you know, when you put it that way, I think you just might be onto something. Again, I haven't read the books, but supposedly in the books, Rhaenyra is anti this plan, and it's the one that Jace decides to go with, which, to be honest, sounds like a stupid 16-year-old's plan. I mean, genuinely, if you're Rhaenyra, this is the last thing you would want to do. Sure, they need an extra dragon because Rhaenys was allowed to go and commit seppuku in episode 4, but you're telling me 4 dragons and some ballistas couldn't take down Vhagar? My ass just pressed an X to doubt on that one. And the reason this even matters is because Rhaenyra is supposed to be a player of the game. As we know, you either win the Game of Thrones or you die. So to have Rhaenyra sipping on the dum-dum juice makes her a less compelling character. And that's a real problem because Rhaenyra, like I said, is essentially the main character of the show, which is a part of the problem this show has as well. In a lot of the stuff after the show where they talk about the episode, they say how no one's really a true villain and no one's really a true hero in the show. And I would very much disagree with that. Now, Rhaenyra and Team Black are not perfect. Most of their problems and questionable actions come from them being stupid or an accident. With the Greens, it's just straight up malice. They are intending to do harm. Just because you have Helaena, who is pretty innocent, doesn't tip the scales. As a side note, is it just me, or should Rhaenyra and Alicent hate each other? Alicent's son murdered Rhaenyra's son, and then whether an accident or not, Daemon had Alicent's grandson killed. These two should hate each other. But no, they just casually teleport into each other's houses and they're like, I mean, we were friends once. Let's hug. Another ridiculous thing from Rhaenyra is her kiss with Mysaria and her unquenched love of Alicent. The Mysaria kiss thing came out of nowhere. We were in the middle of an episode and then there were some smoochies between them. Felt like a little bit of Twitter fanfic got in there. Same with the Rhaenyra and Alicent secretly loving each other. Listen, I got no problem if you want to have a gay character in the show. Or honestly, even if you wanted to have Rhaenyra as bisexual. But there's 2 problems with it. 1, it wasn't written like that in the book. And 2, you gotta set it up. You can't have one whole season and a half where Rhaenyra is only interested in men, and then all of a sudden have her bi-awakening while she's in the middle of fighting a war. Rhaenyra has essentially been able to do whatever she wanted and be with whoever she wanted her whole life, and just now she decides she wants to play kissy time with girls. Why that matters is just due to consistency of your characters. Is it a ginormous deal? No, but it's just an example of the mass inconsistencies that we keep having with Rhaenyra and other characters. Overall, I think this season was a waste of time. The first 4 episodes were pretty good, but as for the last 4, I could have done without. If this season stopped after 4 episodes, nothing would change. We would be in the same place that we are now. If I had to give this something, I'd give the first half of the season 7.5 or 8. The second half, a 4. But what do you guys think? You think I'm being a silly goose? Do I just hate good shows and want to ruin things with my bah humbug attitude? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video, and thanks for watching.